Welcome everyone to Mail Fuzz TV. I am Peter, that is Connor, and we are going to talk about Star Trek The Next Generation Season 7 Episode 5. It's called Gambit Part 2. So, spoilers for the episode. And of course we took the unplanned month gap in between Part 1 and Part 2 of a two-parter. That was very helpful.
One of the very rare occasions I watch the recap. I usually just, I don't need to see this. I'll just skip it or just tune out.
Yeah, no, I mean, we were relatively positive on the first half. We enjoyed it for the most part. This episode, I would say I mostly enjoyed it, but I did have one kind of big glaring issue as it went on, and that was the lack of reaction to the fact that everyone else thinks Picard is dead, and then when they see him...
I think they all, because I did notice it, but I genuinely do think this is all, they're professionals and they understand to play along.
Okay.
Like, there's an argument to be made for the scenes after he shows up and, that they're alone.
Yeah, no one's talking about it. Why is no one mentioning, oh, that's funny how Picard's alive, isn't it?
Yeah. But during the moments, I think I'm willing to just go with, they picked up on the cues.
I get it in principle. I think a few close-ups or reaction shots of them just hesitating for a moment, sort of as it's sinking in. It's a moment of thought process before they go along with it. That's fine. But like you say, afterwards, when Picard's back on the other ship and they're like themselves again, it's so weird that we don't get even one moment of someone saying, "Hey, Riker, why you explain how Picard's alive?" or something. Just no moment of that. It was really weird to just be absent.
The closest we get is Riker being like, "Well, it's a long story," and then it kind of cuts away.
Yeah, and then by the time we come back, seemingly he's just told them everything, and it feels, because the last episode does such a good job of starting with this. They all really think Picard is dead, and they're treating it seriously. Riker looks like a man possessed, wanting to find out who did it. Everyone's on board to help him. It's a whole thing, and that's all great. But then this episode, honestly, if it wasn't for the fact that they mention it at the end, if you'd forgotten that Picard was supposed to be dead at the start of last episode, you probably wouldn't have remembered. Nothing would have reminded you until the very, very end of the episode, where they make a little joke where he's like, "Hey, you're technically supposed to be dead, sir, so you shouldn't be giving out orders."
Yeah.
So
I don't even think it's in the previously on.
Yeah, which is a shame because it felt like such a big deal in the last episode. So the idea that it doesn't even matter in this one. That's how it feels. It feels like it doesn't matter that he was presumed dead last episode. Yeah,
that's fair.
So that bugged me.
That aside, I think it's actually pretty good.
It's mostly a fun time. I'm a little worried about trying to recount it because by its design, it's very convoluted as to who's supposed to be aligned with who and who knows who each other really are. It's because obviously Riker, Picard know who each other are to begin with, but then the Vulcan lady at one point gets involved and understands that they're both from the Enterprise, and then they're back over in the on the Enterprise and they're doing a whole fake thing to steal this artifact, but they're still being in character in front of the goons that came with them from the other ship, and then Picard goes back, but obviously he fakes killing Riker, but then Riker gets up, and it's there's a lot of back and forth as to who's aware of what.
On top of that, you've got the Vulcan woman on the ship who is pretending to be a Romulan for a start.
Yes.
And then it's like, no, she's a Vulcan. And then she's like, oh, I'm with their spy special forces. So for a long time, the episode is that. And then it's, no, she's not. She's just one of those people that she was warning you against, the isolationists.
Honestly, I was getting the impression when they revealed that it was her that I thought, oh, I don't think there is a group. I think it's just her. She was just describing herself and no one else.
Possibly. I honestly don't know. I think that's maybe a slight failure of the episode. They didn't make that clear at the end.
I will say that scene where Riker calls Vulcan and is like, "Hey, so this ship's coming in, but we're doing a bit of a sting operation. Don't worry about it. But your agent's on the ship." And the Vulcan's like,
"What?
What are you talking about there?" When that happened, I was like, okay, this might be actually one too many changes. We've done too many of these already.
Yeah, but it was essential for the ending as well.
Yeah. It definitely was a very convoluted line of thought between all these things.
And the literal like power of love is what wins the day, essentially.
Yeah, that was a bit weird.
It's unusual.
It's just an odd sequence of events, because I feel like, to me, the main thing that the last episode set up was the tension of pretending to be someone else under this captain played by B-movie legend Richard Lynch, right? Baran, right? Him in charge of his ship. They're pretending to hate each other. And then I was intrigued in this episode when Baran's like, hey, Riker, now that I'm winning you over, at least he thinks that anyway, I want you to befriend Galen, aka Picard, and find out who on this ship aligns themselves with him and report back to me. So he's trying to play Riker against Picard, thinking they hate each other, and he wants Riker to pretend that he doesn't hate him. But in reality, of course, it's Riker and Picard, so obviously they like each other just fine. And I thought, oh, this is fun. I like this. I like that. All of this is what I was into. When it shifted more to the Vulcan lady, and like she was actually the end game of the plot, I kind of felt like, oh, this isn't what this two-parter felt like it was setting up for me. We've already dealt with Baran. He's done already. He's dead.
So what's really interesting right now is this sounds really nitpicky, and this sounds like we kind of hated this episode. But while I was watching it, I was mostly having a good time.
I was mostly enjoying it as well, but I think when you actually look at it as a whole, and the way it shifts focus from who I thought the villain was supposed to be to the secondary villain, and then on top of that, like, she's wanting this artifact because it's a telepathic weapon, but then when she actually gets the telepathic weapon all put together at the end, Picard figures out very quickly that as long as you're completely at peace in your own mind, it can't harm you, because it feeds on your own like sort of anger and rage and all that kind of thing. So he basically just tells Riker, and Worf's the tricky one because he's a Klingon, right? So he's always got the. I
do like that she goes for him extra. Like, oh hey, he's not buying this. He's not going to be peaceful. Look at him.
I did like that detail. That was a nice detail. There's a few nice details in this I like. There's two ideas in here that I really enjoyed. One was the scene where Data takes Worf aside and explains to him that he can't second guess what his orders are in front of everyone else, and Worf says, but I always do that with the captain. And he's like, yeah, you do as security officer, but have you ever heard Riker disagree with the captain in front of everyone? No, you're the first officer. You can challenge me. You're there to keep me on my toes. You're here to keep me right. But
suggest
you don't
ideas, but don't question it.
Yeah, but don't do it in front of them. If you've got problems, then you do it in private. And I actually like that scene. I also like the end of it where Worf thinks that he's ruined the friendship, and Data's like, well, or Data thinks he's ruined the friendship, and Worf's like, no.
Let's just forget this ever happened.
It's like, yeah, I'd like that too. So I like that line of thinking.
I like the moment that like prompted it as well. Is it wasn't just the questioning; it was the little like huff that he gave as he walked off, and even Geordie was like looking at him, going, "Oh, that was a bit weird."
Yeah, it's a little bit disobedient in that. So I enjoyed that. It was Data flexing his muscles as a captain character, and his logic made sense. It was nice to point out there's a difference between what Worf's role was before and what his role is now. At least for this episode. Obviously, he's back to being security chief after this because Riker's back. But I thought that was a nice scene. And I'm trying to remember what the other one was, but there was something else. I think with I think it was on the other ship with the other characters. I think it might have been when I think it was some of the stuff with Picard learning about the Vulcan history and sort of the mythology of like, okay, before they found peace and stopped giving into their emotions, they had this kind of like these weapons, and I think this is the sad part, is that I actually kind of liked her talking about, oh, there's like a terrorist group of Vulcans who want to go back to the old ways, and they're trying to incite this by getting this artifact so they can use it as a weapon. I think that was the second thing I was kind of liking, which was almost a shame at the end, where not only did it seem like it was a lie in a sense that it was just her rather than an actual group, but also it's nullified within seconds.
Is it a lie, or is that truly isolationist?
I mean, I suppose yes. Technically, one person is about as isolated as one could be. But in this case, Isolationist was more referring to the fact that these Vulcans wanted Vulcan to be cut off from the rest of the star, system.
Which I think, like, just to reference some like Discovery stuff, is a little bit interesting, given where that goes, kind of down the road.
Oh, sure.
Because they kind of cut themselves off and kind of do their own thing, right, for a while.
Yeah. Maybe that was even inspired by going back through stuff like this and.
Yeah. But, obviously, I'm not saying that was the plan. Obviously, that was clearly not the plan here. But the idea that, okay, maybe there was actually something there, which is why I didn't assume it was just fully a lie. And maybe I think, there is a potential for that.
Yeah, maybe there are more people who agree with her, but she's just not actually working with a group. She's not built like a team or anything. She's just kind of on her own. As far as just entertainment value goes, I actually did like this sort of like running gag. The bad guy team was meant to be meeting up with a Klingon at one point who's going to he's got one of the parts of the artifact that he's going to sell them, and the Enterprise are able to figure out because Picard sent a hidden signal to the ship before they beamed away earlier, and they find this Klingon ship first, and they bring him on board, and it's like, hey, technically we can't search him. And then Worf's like, actually, there's a clause in the treaty that for health and safety we can search the ship. And Data ultimately agrees. That's a fun little, because this comes after their little conversation about how they talk to each other in front of people.
And he's there grinding his teeth that Data's seemingly not going to go along with it.
But then Data does. He takes a suggestion. It's a simple thing, but the running gag here that this Klingon's just really tall and makes Worf and Data look like tiny people was just really funny to me. I don't know why, but the shot of Worf standing next to this Klingon who's like 2 foot taller than him was just making me chuckle.
The very first time I thought the Klingon was still stood on the ramp, like coming out of the ship, and was just like not all the way down. And I was like, oh no, he's just really, really tall. Like, fair enough, that works too, especially for a big scary Klingon dude.
And then he just refused to, talk to them about anything. He's like, no, I'm not going to tell you anything.
He knows his rights.
He does.
Yeah.
So, and then that leads to Picard and Riker leading this team coming out of the Enterprise to steal stuff.
Yeah. Which reminds me of another scene that is ultimately kind of pointless and weird. It's Picard's going around talking to some of the other crew members, seeing, who's going to be with me for this little revolution we got going on. And he goes to one of the guys, and he's like, hey, I'm thinking maybe the captain shouldn't be the captain anymore. He's like, I agree, but neither should you. And then they're like, fair enough. It's like, maybe the Vulcan woman, she seems like a pretty good replacement. We all like her. And Picard's like, yeah, that sounds like a good idea. And then it comes to the showdown at the end. He stages his moment. He's like, right, you are no longer the captain. And at no point does he pass it back over to the Vulcan. Like, he's just like, I'm the captain now.
Look
and
at
no
me.
one questions it.
Look at me. I'm the captain now.
Exactly. He does that. Like, none of them even think twice about it. They're all like, yeah, of course he is. Well, why do we have a scene of them going, no, not you. You're new. We don't trust you. I know. Like, he survives being not shot by Riker, but that shouldn't be enough to win trust to give him the captaincy.
Yeah. I think as well, I felt like this really probably should have just been the ending of the episode when he's rigged the Suicide Squad style bomb in the neck to sort of revert back to Baran himself, right? So Baran presses the button and he just kills himself. And honestly, I feel like you could have just ended the story here. I was surprised to find that there was over 10 minutes of the episode still left or whatever it was. And I'm like, did we really need like a mystery of like who they were going to sell this thing to? You could have just said, oh, they're getting this because it's going to be very valuable, right? And you could have left it there.
I think once it said that it was a weapon, they kind of had to.
Yeah, that's true. Like, I don't get me wrong. I get that there's other things that are setting up what comes after earlier, particularly with the Vulcan lady, but it just felt kind of like, oh, this was like to me the main premise of this entire two-parter was him undercover on this ship with this guy and trying to like deal with that.
It's almost like they didn't quite have enough for the runtime of 2 parts. They were like, oh, we're like 10, 15 minutes short. What can we do? So they kind of go back in and make the thing that they're, the artifact a weapon to tack on this last 10 minutes for that almost.
Yeah, it kind of feels like that, I suppose. It's
to its credit, I don't think it like felt like that when I was watching it. It didn't feel like a tacked on ending, as much as we we're saying, oh, this is where it should have ended. Like, it's got a really natural climax there. It's not like the stuff that comes after it's terrible. It's not like it's just, oh, let's just shove in filler for 10 minutes. There's still stuff there that I like.
No, like, I still enjoyed the reactions, like Riker realizing, oh shit, the Vulcan lady's not who she says she is. Crap, we got to deal with that now. The joke at the end with Data taking Riker to the brig because technically he's been branded a traitor, and he's like, no, he was joking, Data. He was joking, Data.
You know he was joking, right?
Right. No, I mean, like, it's all entertaining stuff. I guess I think by the end of this, I kind of, because it was such a convoluted web of like allegiances, and then we pivoted from who the villain was to the secondary villain. I think by the end, I was like, okay, that was a fun, entertaining episode, but like any chance it had of being like, because I think the first part when they had like the characters genuinely think Picard was dead, and Riker wanted to find who was responsible, and it was this personal goal. It felt like a big deal. And I think this episode, while entertaining, it lost that feeling of it being a big deal. This is just a fluffy, entertaining episode now, as opposed to, oh, this is one that I'm going to remember because it feels like it's a big pivotal moment for the characters. Here, it just felt kind of like, oh, it's just a fun one, you know?
Yeah, I agree with that. I think there's a mild concern in the back of my head, not about this episode specifically, but about the reputation of this season. And I'm like, oh no, what if this is one of the good ones? Like, what if this is one of the best ones?
Maybe.
Yeah, because I thought this was for as much as we're nitpicking, say, oh, it went down to just kind of pretty fluffy, but still enjoyable. If that's still on the upper end of the scale, that's a little bit concerning.
Yeah, I'm not too sure. All things considered, I mean, let's see here. All right, so this is episode 5. Let me see. I'm going to look through IMDb and just tell you how many episodes are lower rated than this one.
Wait, is it going to be quicker to do lower or higher?
It's probably quicker to do higher, to be honest. So how many are higher than this one? Or I'll say even or higher, right? So a match will still...
Yeah.
Right? Oh, right. Okay, that's 1, 2, 3... 4 and 5.
Okay.
So 21 episodes left. 5 of them are equal or better rated on IMDb.
So 15 or 16 are worse than this, according to the general concept. Not that we always line up with the general concept.
Yeah, we don't always, no, not for sure. But
as a rule, it's a good place to start looking as a baseline.
So keep that in mind.
Yeah. Because this is not a bad episode, but in any other season, out of the last handful, it's not getting close to a top 5 conversation.
No,
there's a concern in my head that this season it might be.
Yes, well, hey ho, that's Gambit Part 2. I don't think I have much more to add, to be honest. I guess maybe the start of the episode was also a little bit deflating because it felt like it's such a big cliffhanger to end with. Oh no, like they've put their shields down because they think Riker's playing a trick, and he kind of is. But the cliffhanger was, oh, the beam hits them, and it's like, oh shit, this is a big deal. And then this one starts, and they're like, oh, the beam hit us, but
it did nothing.
Yeah, no major damage. Oh, okay.
Yeah, I don't know how much of that is just Picard was intentionally aiming at like points that weren't going to be a problem, and like, or he was lowering the the damage of the weapon, like, or literally just this ship's a bit shit compared to the Enterprise, isn't it? Let's be honest.
Well, even later on, before the Vulcan lady like forces him to say who he is, and she's sort of speculating there's something not right. She does point out that, hey, like, what was wrong with the phaser blasts or whatever, and he's like, oh, the energy, like, so I think they were weaker blasts, and he has like an excuse for it.
No, because I think that was why didn't you keep firing? And he's like, there was like an overload, so why didn't you do any more?
Oh, fair enough. Okay.
Yeah, at least that was how I took it. Maybe I'm wrong, but
I mean, either way, he has to explain why he didn't just annihilate them. Uh, so, hey, that's Gambit Part 2. Let's see what's coming next time. Now, obviously, next time we'll be doing a Deep Space Nine, but when we come back to Next Generation, we'll be looking at an episode called Phantasms. Here's a description on IMDb. Data deals with his new ability to experience nightmares as the Enterprise deals with the installation of a new warp core that won't work as expected.
Okay, the data half sounds interesting.
Yeah.
The other side, there's nothing there to go on. Could be good, could be bad.
Yeah. It's open for whatever it may be. But that's what's coming up next time on TNG, so we'll see for that. Let us know what you thought of Gambit Part 2 in the comments. Like, subscribe, all the usual things, helps us out a lot. And of course, you can support all the content over at patreon.com/MailFuzzTV and help keep everything coming and all that stuff. But that is us, so thank you once again. We'll see you next time. Keep watching Star Trek, and somewhere out there, I have to remember what my outro was for this show.
I know it's been a while, but did you actually forget?
I actually forgot what I say at the end of this. Somewhere out there, Wesley Crusher is pretending to be a pirate as well. But you know what? I bet I ended the last one with saying they walked him off the plank. It's such an obvious joke that I'm sure I did it the last time.